Annalie Howling, so happy to have you on, performance coach and therapist extraordinaire to CEOs, elite athletes, and also armed forces personnel too. I want to focus on the recovering from setbacks piece. Now, this can be, of course, a sliding scale depending on what your setback looks like. And for many people, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be the be all and end all, but it can be something that they need to bounce back from. So are there techniques to overcome that? Depending on wherever you are on that scale, there must be some common things that you come across which you can implement depending on, you know, what your experience is.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for asking me that. It's an amazing framing of that question, because it is this huge sliding scale. And, you know, I'm divorced, for example, and like single parenting. So you could say that that's a setback. And then I see people every day for PTSD and trauma and work through, what that might be. And again, everybody's experience of that is this traumatic event to themselves. And you could potentially look at that and say, oh, well, that was a huge accident and that was someone being rude to you. But it's the impact that it has on us and how we work around it.
And everyone deals with different things
Absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely. And something that may bother you may not have an effect on me. And so many factors that go into that. The biggest piece of work that I've done personally, and that if I'm working with clients and other people to kind of try and get to, is that it sounds a bit cliche, but it's almost, you need to get to a place of such radical self-love or self-belief, call it that, like that your cup is so full that you know that you will be okay no matter what happens to you. And so it's like this benchmark, I think, that we can create from ourselves. Honestly, my benchmark got raised when I went through the biggest challenges, the biggest kind of setbacks, and they all seem to happen at once. That's the other thing.
Well, that is the other bananas thing about this, like what you think you can cope with versus, you know, the reality of the situation. Like you could underestimate yourself so massively in this context, can't you?
Yeah, I wouldn't. So for myself, I'm happy to speak, but I just want to be a bit careful about some clients, but I'll use some other story as well where it's helpful. It was divorce, it was lockdown, it's lawyers, your business is tanking because it's lockdown, you're single parenting. I grew up in a horribly violent childhood, so I didn't have family support at that time either. Had an awful frenemy situation, like really nasty situation that really kind of shook me to my core, because maybe you expect relationships sometimes not to work out. When a friend betrays you, that can be a different hurt in a different way. I see you nodding there. And so all of it just seemed to be coming at once. And I remember I literally remember standing in my garden going, just please, I don't know who I was talking to, like, just can someone cut me a break? Just, I can cope with one or I can cope with most of them. Please, can you just cut me a break somewhere? And I did deal with it. And it wasn't pretty, and I had to let go of people, and I had to put boundaries in. And I think we get a bit icked by that word now, but it's true. I had to stop giving parts of myself away.
You do all that consciously and sort of with purpose, or just because it was just a way of kind of getting through the situation?
I think a bit of both. So I do fortunately have some of the skills and techniques and knowledge. And I think you just go back to the foundations. You know, I love what you do and the products that you make. And it's going back to, it's not bells and whistles, it's foundational principles that really do work and nudge the needle. So, I mean, I developed such chronic anxiety. I had to have Botox put in my jaw because, like, I'm happy to pay for it in my forehead, but I was like, I'm not wasting this in my jaw. But like, I had to have it done because I was clenching my jaw. I think it's bruxism. My anxiety was so bad. I was doing it all night that I was clenching it, and she couldn't get the needle in that side. I remember it was horrendous because it was so tight. Yep. And so I developed all of these
Did it help?
Did, yeah.
It did.
It really helps. If anyone's suffering, because I know it is very common, it really helped actually, because it trains you out of being able to do it. So you kind of reduce the habit.
And then you stop the habit.
Okay. And for me, it was quite a new habit, shall we say, so it had managed to reverse it. But I stripped the engine. And I would recommend anyone doing that. I stripped it back. I was like, right.
What does that mean?
So I stopped seeing certain people that I found quite triggering. Didn't mean that they were bad people at all, but there were some people that would say, perpetually talk about material things. And at that point, I'm like, I might not be able to stay in my house with my kid. And so I found that really distressing. That was a huge source of anxiety for me, financial anxiety. I meditated every day. I can control what food I put in my mouth, what supplements I may take. I can control how I move my body, being careful if I was feeling very overactivated, not to maybe do something that I was going to get injury, just things like that. So I was controlling the people, places and things that I could at that time and removing anything else. And the other factor I would say would be, what were I absolutely have to do these things. And then what are the things I feel like I should? You know, who are the people I feel like I should be keeping in touch with? What are the I don't know, even like societal shoulds that I think are being put on me right now. And they had to go out the window because I didn't have it in me. It was to look after me as best as I possibly could.
I think COVID did that for a lot of people. I think everyone's world shrunk during COVID, and you kind of did only end up reaching out to the people that you knew you could sort of have those conversations in, or had your back, because you'd just lived such a, I don't know, you'd had such a close relationship with them in the years that preceded that, you know, you would just talk about things that felt comfortable during that time, and you sort of shut out everybody else from those conversations. I think a lot of people went through that during that time.
Yeah, it was a really...
to manage the anxiety of it.
Definitely. And there was actually, I remember there's a really nice opportunity to kind of, and I mean this lovingly, but lose touch with some people, because like our parents' generation...
way.
Right. Our parents' generation got to just, they moved house and never saw them again. You know, a Christmas card or whatever. Like, but for us with social media and being ever interconnected, I just managed to sort of, I made my circle much, much smaller. And so where I may have just gone out for people and I felt that wasn't serving my energy and was leaving me in a worse place. So I wasn't able to care for my daughter or my business in the same way, or my clients. And the other thing that I did that I would always recommend is it's called a helper's high. It's a psychological uplift you get from giving. And it is a real thing. And I got to work throughout the whole of lockdown as well, because I do trauma therapy. So I'm just going to trigger warning this. I had the most cases I've ever seen for sexual assault during that time. And it was all historical. So I think because a lot of us have just been busy and doing whatever we needed to do to not think about the things that were coming up, during that time in particular, there weren't the external activities that we could do to distract ourselves. So I had so many cases to work with that actually it made me feel incredibly purposeful, which also was something that is a good solid foundation of my being and my life, and kept me mentally on track.
I definitely think there's something about the purposeful bit that really helps you recover from a problem. I mean, from my point of view, having gone through 8 rounds of IVF and everything that Ben and I did to go through that procedure, when we were then in New Zealand and during COVID once again, but in that scenario and in that setup, actually my purpose then became to develop this supplement range, which we've since done, and to bring that to market. But it gave me not just a sort of a sense of self-worth, but actually what I needed. I physically was craving these supplements because I needed exactly what they had in them for my daily performance. And that's fine. That ticks one box. But it was something else that was unexpected at the time that happened, which was actually by taking control of that situation and sort of being able to affect change in that way. It really helped my head, really sorted me out from the setback that I had, you know, obviously had mentally and physically going through an IVF cycle or several IVF cycles. It really helped me get back on track by having a purpose. And I guess that's what you're talking about in another sense.
Completely. It just gets you out of your own way. I think when we've got all this space sort of to even evaluate ourselves or overthink or have anxiety like I did, you know, where will I live and what will I do? The second I would start giving and doing what I'm thankfully able to do to really help people. I mean, I could be walking down the high street and our daughters go to school, you know, and someone could call me any name under the sun. If I've just done one of those sessions, I am literally immune to it. I genuinely don't care, like, and not in a horrible way, because I know I've just done something so meaningful for somebody that it matters not to me if you don't like the shoes I'm wearing or whatever. Like, it's unimportant to me. So yeah, I would highly advocate for whatever that might be. And purpose, a definition of purpose that might be helpful for any listeners that I really like and connect to, is that it's a cause greater than yourself, like you creating the supplements. It's so other people could benefit from things that you knew really help you when you're in that point of pain. It's like repurposing your pain to help others, and then connecting to a community that are like-minded. So again, I think a lot of people find themselves feeling unsupported, say, by people in their lives. And by working purposefully, I really do think that, yeah, you're working on something greater than you, which is giving you this helper's high and, you know, really filling your cup with something very good for you. And then you're able to connect to a community of people that are like-minded and working.
What have you got to watch out for when you're talking about recovery from setbacks? What are the sorts of things that can trip you up?
Unfortunately, there are some people that may prey at that time. Narcissism is widely overused in social media. And the reason I sometimes don't love that is there are people that are genuinely huge victims of narcissism, which is a CPTSD case for me. I don't like the term used too flippantly, oh, they're a narcissist. They're probably just rude and mean. But it is true that sometimes when you're very vulnerable, people that you may not otherwise, I don't want to use the word tolerate, but you may not be as resilient, shall we say, or you may not be as aware of advances. Whereas when I'm working with clients, I'd say to them, unfortunately, it's often on the back of the death of a loved one or an injury or an ailment or having gone through a huge physical and emotional challenge. And then someone manages to kind of take up a role, and it can be quite toxic. So that is definitely something that I have seen quite often.
Okay. So finally, the single most important thing about recovering from setbacks. I mean, we've talked a lot about how we can take control back ourselves, and being proactive about that. What would you say if you had to say the one thing that can really shift the needle on recovering from a setback? What would it be?
I would say exactly like your beautiful example of how you've created the supplements and your why is look at a way to turn the pain that you had into purpose to help someone else.
That's a nice answer. Perfect. Thank you, Annalie.